Hey everyone, in celebration of the resurrection, I wanted to share a little bit of my testimony with you guys. So, a little bit of background. I didn't really grow up into church. I would maybe be involved with youth group and pop into church here and there, but I wasn't consistent and I didn't really have a home church. But most of what I know about Jesus and Christianity is through my grandmother. She taught me most of what I know and she's still teaching me. I have two younger brothers. Most of my childhood was pretty normal. Up until junior high when my grandmother passed away, my dad didn't know how to handle it, so he resorted to drinking, which then my mom got sick of and decided that it wasn't a good environment for me and my brothers to be in, so they divorced, which then made my dad drink even more. So I think I dealt with that pretty well, other than the lifestyle changes. And then my senior year, towards the end of my senior year, my dad was admitted into the hospital. And he was in there for about 2 weeks and got released 2 weeks before my graduation. So within those 2 weeks, my dad was recovering and just trying to get back to normal. I remember him complaining about headaches a lot, but he ended up making it to my graduation. So that was a good memory to have of my dad. And then fall came around, I enrolled into college at the branch, and about 8 months later, my dad relapsed and started drinking again, and was readmitted into the hospital at Med Central. He was there for about a week and a half before we decided to have him transferred down to OSU. By the time he got to OSU, they wanted to do biopsies to see how they could repair his liver and what exactly was going on. But by the time that he got there, he was way too weak. He couldn't go through the surgery. So the doctors asked if I would sign a DNR, which at 18, I had no idea what a DNR was, let alone having to sign one. So that was really hard to come to that decision to actually sign it. So a few days went by. My brother and I were going up to see my dad at OSU, and I remember a doctor pulling us into a room and talking to us, and I don't remember what exactly she said to us. I have no idea what she explained. All I remember is her saying, "Your dad is dying," and my world was completely flipped upside down. And during this time while my dad was sick, I had so much hope. I had prayed almost every day that God would just heal my dad. And even to this point, I was still in denial about what the doctors had to say, because I knew that God was bigger and that he could still heal my dad, and my dad would come home and things would go back to normal. So anyways, I had him move to hospice, which I don't know if they didn't have like home hospice then, but the closest hospice that they could get him into was in Ashland. So we got him moved. I got the paperwork filled out, everything I needed to do, and they asked if I wanted to stay the night that night, and I said no. I wanted to go home and get a good night's sleep because I had been exhausted from being at the hospital for days on end. And so the next day, I took my time. I went over to my uncle's to visit with him, and I remember it had been very snowy out this day, so I didn't want to drive to Ashland, and my uncle agreed to take me. So we got lunch, headed up to Ashland to hospice, and I remember getting there, and my dad was in a deep sleep at this point. And I just knew that it wasn't good. So I remember sitting there with my aunt, my dad's sister, and we were just watching him breathe. And that's all we could do, was just sit there and watch him breathe. And at this point, I was waiting on my brothers to get there because I was texting them, telling them they needed to hurry up. They needed to come and see my dad. So probably 15 minutes after we got there, my dad passed away. I remember crying. I remember not being able to let go of his hand. And I remember thinking to myself, I have to get myself together because somebody has to tell my brothers. So I got up and I went out into the lobby and I looked outside. Now remember, it was pouring down rain this day. Like, it was so bad out. And I remember looking up into the sky and it just opened up. The clouds just completely opened up. The sun was shining, and it was almost as if God was telling me that it was okay. And after that, my brothers had pulled in, so I went out to greet them, and I hugged them both, and I remember my oldest brother saying, "Tina, what is wrong?" And I just looked at them and I said, "Dad's gone." So we went home, we got the funeral planned out, went through the funeral, whatever. Things started to go back to normal. And then a few months later, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So while my mom was going through her treatments and just fighting the battle, I was watching her become weak and frail, and all the doctors and nurses that had to come in, and that was just so much for me to cope with. So I ran away from it. I would go and I'd hang out with my friends. I would drink on the weekends. I would find any way possible to just not be present, because I hadn't even had time to deal with my dad's death, let alone prepare for the news of my mom having to fight cancer. So that was me just trying to figure things out, even though it was sinful and I shouldn't have done it. And I mean, I didn't know at the time. I was young. By this time, I was probably 19. So 8 months later, after my mom's diagnosis, she passed away on June 23rd, 2013. And then somewhere in there is when me and Tyler got together and we started dating. And then October 2014, I lost my grandfather. And then Tyler was there. He helped me through it. He was just the light of my life then, in such a dark place. Then November 2014 is when Tyler and I got engaged. So at that point, I thought, wow, things good can come out of this. Like, I'm not 100% being punished for the things that I'm doing. So I started to have a little bit of hope again. And then in May 2015, on Mother's Day, I found out I was pregnant. And then August 2015, Tyler and I got married. And then 2016 is when Kenna was born. And Kinsley was just the light of our life. She completely changed our lives around. And I remember when I was pregnant with her, I came home from school one day and I saw this little angel. I had never seen this angel in my life, but it was sitting straight up in the middle of the hallway. And Tyler was gone. He was at work. So I called him and I said, "Hey, did you put this angel in the middle of the hallway?" And he's like, "No." And on this angel it said, "Expect miracles." And I remember having the conversation with my mom when she was sick that I would never have kids if she passed away. And for me to see that, that was confirmation that my mom was looking over me and that God was with me and everything was going to be okay. So then I was getting ready to graduate. I had to take a semester off, so I didn't get to graduate with all my other colleagues because Kinsley was going to be born. So then after Kinsley was born, I went back in the fall to finally finish school. And then I was lucky enough to get into the district that I lived in. And I didn't have to go on campus to do any of my classes. My professor would come to me. So that was such a blessing, even, to finish school and with a newborn. And I was also working part-time. And then I found out I was pregnant. And I was devastated. I was completely scared because with Kinsley I had a C-section, which was it was very scary and the recovery was awful. So I was like, I don't want to go through a C-section. I don't know how I'm going to pay for a kid. I don't know how I'm going to pay for school. I just had all these thoughts going through my head about why I couldn't do this. So that her pregnancy was really hard. But I ended up finishing school, and in June 2017 was when Kenna was born, and she has been a blessing to our lives ever since. And then August 2019 is when we met Nate and Liz at a wedding, and we talked to them, and I told Tyler, I was like, man, Nate knows how to do a wedding. I'm like, I bet he could preach too. So then we decided to go to church at Avenue and check it out, and we've been coming ever since. We haven't stopped, and we are so thankful for Nate and Liz and the changes that they've brought to our lives. They're like family now, and we are so glad that we are challenged in our faith and in our walk in Jesus, and the amount of growth that we have seen since we've been in Avenue is completely unreal, and I'm so thankful for that. But even though that I've been through so much in my life where I wanted to give up, where I was angry with Jesus, where I was angry with God, I didn't understand why he wasn't hearing my prayers. And now I understand. He was there carrying me through all of it. He never gave up on me, and he showed me that there can be light in darkness. And that's what he did. He completely has blessed me with a wonderful family, a wonderful church family, and I am so thankful for where I'm at in life. God bless you all.